Alright, here are the solutions to quiz 3. First question, got to take a derivative, got to use the quotient rule. Here's the quotient rule over here. It's whenever you're trying to find the derivative of something divided by something, it follows this form. And a few things that are pointed out here, we'll be taking the derivative of this guy, but since these guys are all equal, we know that our answer should be the same as the derivative of this guy, kind of like it pointed out over here. So it might be worth figuring out this guy first just so we know where we're trying to end up. And the derivative of that guy isn't too bad. Pull the 2 out in front. Derivative of x squared is 2x. So you get 2 times 2x, which is 4x, plus the derivative of 3x is 3. So hopefully our answer, when we simplify all the way down, will get us to this 4x plus 3. So alright, we're using the quotient rule. What I call f, the thing on top, is 2x to the 4th plus 3x cubed. And g, thing in the denominator, is x squared. Those are both derivatives we know how to take. The derivative of f is 8x cubed plus 9x squared. You take this 4, multiply it by the 2, and then subtract 1 from the 4. 3 times 3 is 9. 3 minus 1, you left with 2. Derivative of x squared is 2x. And these 4 pieces are everything that we need to plug in over here. F prime, 8x cubed plus 9x squared. And we want to multiply that times g, x squared. And then we have to subtract f, which is 2x to the 4th plus 3x cubed. Be careful with the parentheses here. Make sure you want to subtract all of f times g. So parentheses will help you remember what you're doing. F times g prime, that is. And g prime is 2x. This entire thing gets divided by g squared. G is x squared. X squared squared is x to the 4th. This doesn't yet look like this, but hopefully if we simplify a little bit, distribute that x squared through, and you get 8x to the 5th minus plus 9x to the 4th. And then we want to subtract, distribute this 2x through. 2x times 2x to the 4th is 4x to the 5th. And then be careful, make sure you want to subtract here. We're subtracting all this stuff. 2x times 3x cubed gives you 6x to the 4th. So we got minus 6x to the 4th. A mistake I saw a few times was leaving that as a plus. And that's all over x to the 4th. So we got 8x to the 5th minus 4x to the 5th. 8 minus 4 is 4. 9x to the 4th minus 6x to the 4th. 9 minus 6 is 3. And that's divided by x to the 4th. Still not quite where we want to be, but we're getting closer. If you factor out an x to the 4th from the top, we'll be left with, well, and then cancel it with this x to the 4th down here. We'll be left with 4x plus 3, which sure enough matches up with what we hoped it would. So we're good. Moving on to part B. Kind of similar. Again, our answer should be 4x plus 3, except now we use the product rule. Here's the f, here's the g. So we got f equals x to the negative 2 power, g equals 2x to the 4th plus 3x cubed. We've already taken this derivative of g, it's 8x cubed plus 9x squared. We did that in part A. This derivative over here, a little bit trickier. Take the exponent, bring it down in front. Negative 2x, subtract 1. Negative 2 minus 1 is minus 3. Common mistake was to make that minus 1, or I saw a few other things also. But now you have these 4 pieces. It's everything you need for the product rule. So this derivative is equal to f prime, negative 2x to the negative 3 times g. 2x to the 4th plus 3x cubed. We want to add to that f, which is x to the negative 2 times g prime, 8x cubed plus 9x squared. So now we just have to simplify this, hope we can get it up to 4x plus 3. Let's see here. Negative 2 times 2 gives us a negative 4. When you're adding, or when you're multiplying exponents with the same base, you add the exponents. So 4 times negative 3 is positive 1. So we got negative 4x. Similarly, negative 2 times 3 is negative 6. So the coefficient's a negative 6. Add the exponents, you get x to the 0 power, which is just 1, which we can leave out. Something similar over here, x to the negative 2 times 8x cubed. Coefficient will be an 8. The exponent, 3 plus negative 2 is 1. And 9x squared times x to the negative 2, coefficient's 9. And x to the 0 is the same as 1, so you can just leave this. Put it all together, 8x minus 4x is 4x. 9 minus 6 is 3. Which sure enough matches up with what we hoped it would. Alright, moving on. Question number 2. Question number 2 was a little bit tricky. Maybe when you first look at this, you see a quotient rule. We got something divided by something. The thing on top is e to the x times 2x plus 1. The thing on the bottom is e to the x plus 1. The derivative of the bottom isn't too bad. Derivative of constant, it's just 0. Derivative of e to the x is e to the x. The derivative of f is not so easy. Be careful with this. I saw a few people do different things. 2 e to the x was a common answer. Figured the derivative here was 2 and this was e to the x. But remember, you can't do that. The derivative of a product is not the product of a derivative. You have to use the product rule. So we have to figure out this derivative right here in order to get the 4 pieces we'll need for the quotient rule. So maybe it's worth thinking about that like a whole new problem. We're trying to take this derivative, and this derivative is something times something. That first something being e to the x, and that second something being 2x plus 1. I'll call them f1 and g1 just to separate them from these f's and g's. f1 prime, the derivative of e to the x is just e to the x. g1 prime, derivative of 2x plus 1 is just 2 plus 0, just 2. Now that we have these 4 pieces, we can use the product rule to figure out what goes in here. We want f prime times g, so we got e to the x times 2x plus 1 plus f g prime, e to the x times 2. You can simplify this a little if you want. Turns out you don't have to. Either way will be fine. I did say no need to simplify. But if you distributed this e to the x through, you'd have 2x e to the x, 2x e to the x, and then you'd have 1 e to the x plus 2 e to the x, which is 3 e to the x. So again, either of these are completely fine. I'll use the second one. If it doesn't take a whole lot extra work to simplify, do it even if it's not necessary. And now that we have these first 4 pieces complete, we can figure out our final answer. Our final answer using the quotient rule, we want the derivative of the top, f prime, which is 2x e to the x plus 3 e to the x, and we want that times g. Be careful, it's all that times g, so we need the parentheses. And then from that, we subtract f left alone, e to the x times 2x plus 1 times the derivative of g, which is e to the x. And this entire thing gets divided by g squared, e to the x plus 1 squared. So it says no need to simplify, so no need to go any further than this. We'll just leave this huge mess as our answer for part A. And that brings us on to part B. Find the equation of the tangent line to f of it at x at the point where x equals 0. Alright, so we got f prime of x right here. So our slope will be f prime of 0. Right? We want it when x equals 0. So if we copy this whole mess, except put in zeros everywhere there's an x, we get 2 times 0 times e to the 0. 2 times 0 times e to the 0 plus 3 times e to the 0, and then all that mess times e to the 0 plus 1. That's this term here. And then from that we subtract. We got an e to the 0. We got 2 times 0 plus 1. And then we got another e to the 0. And we divide all of that mess by e to the 0 plus 1 squared. And fortunately for us, this simplifies rather nicely if you remember this fact. Remember, anything to the 0 power is equal to 1. The tiny caveat being 0 to the 0, which is not defined, but any non-zero number raised up to the 0 power is 1. So that really simplifies a lot of this stuff. Anything times 0 is 0, so we got a 0 right there. 3 times 1 is 3. Anything to the 0 is 1. 1 plus 1 is 2. I'll leave it as 1 plus 1 for now. E to the 0 is 1. 2 times 0 is 0. Plus 1 is 1. E to the 0 is 1. I'm trying to leave parentheses so that they match up with what we got up here so it's easier to follow my work. E to the 0 is 1. 1 plus 1 on the bottom, squared. So we got 3 times 2 is 6 minus 1. 1 times 1 times 1. All divided by 2 squared is 4. So we got 5/4 finally is our slope. But remember, we're not done. We need the equation of the tangent line. So we need something that looks like y equals mx plus b. We know, so we need, anytime you want the equation of a line, you need the slope and a point on the line. We know that the x-coordinate, x1, is equal to 0. That's given in the problem. And the y-coordinate we can figure out by plugging 0 back up into the original equation. So be careful with that. Make sure you plug it in up here. So we want f of 0. Maybe we can just look at this thing. Maybe I'll write it up here. E to the 0 is just 1. 2 times 0 is 0 plus 1. So up top we get 1 times 1. And on the bottom, e to the 0 is 1 plus 1 is 2. So this right here tells us that our y value is equal to 1/2. So when x equals 0, y equals 1/2. And now we have all the information we need. You can do this a couple ways. I think the easiest for these problems is to put it into the point slope form. You leave y as y. y1 we got over here is 1/2. M we figured out was 5/4. X you leave alone, and x1 we have is 0. And if you simplify this a little bit, multiply the 5/4 through, you get 5/4 x minus 0, add the 1/2, and you get y equals 5/4 x plus 1/2, which is the equation of the tangent line at x equals 0. And that's the end of quiz 3.